Good morning. It is Comm Cafe time, Facebook Live, and I have a guest with me this morning. I have Scott Paton. Now, lots of people have heard myself and Gordon talking about Scott Paton and maybe have never met him because in January he left Canada to travel for the next 12 to 24 months. So when you can't see him live in person, well, we're going to get him live, but when you don't get to meet him in person, you use technology to bring him onto the show. So good morning, Scott, and welcome to Comm Cafe.
Thanks for having me, Dwayne. Happy to be here.
Yeah, and then really quick, we met about a year and a half ago or so. You came to Toronto, did a course about reverse marketing. I had no clue what reverse marketing was all about until I came and you spoke about reverse marketing, and then we got into that, and now we're into podcasting, all because of you.
Awesome.
So maybe share a little bit about how did you get, you were an early adapter. You've been at it for, especially, let's talk about podcasting first, because I think it got, well, maybe you tell me. I think you got started with podcasting before Udemy.
Absolutely. I began podcasting in the spring of 2005. The word was coined in September 2004. And the reason that I was so late to podcasting was in October of 2004, I decided that I would start blogging. And at that time, nobody knew about WordPress, and nobody knew about blogging. Well, I shouldn't say nobody, but nobody that I knew who was willing to share it with me knew anything about it. So I spent the next 3 months studying blogging, and in December, finally, it was very frustrating, figured out how to set up a blog. So I put 2 new pages on my website. I had them keyword up. I had a keyword in the title and in the text and in the tags, and then I went to blogger.com and Blogspot, which was Google's blogging tool, made a blog, made 2 blog posts, which both had links to my 2 pages, and then I went on a 10-day cruise. When I got back from the 10-day cruise, to my shock and amazement, my 2 pages were number 1 on Yahoo and Google for each of the keywords that I wanted. So one page was number 1 on one keyword, one other page was number 1 on the other. And I was so excited. And at that time, I was working with the Internet Marketing Center, and I rushed into my boss. I had printed off these results, showed him, and he said, "Oh, that's nice, Scott." And I was devastated. I thought this was a major breakthrough, because at the time we were saying it's going to take 3 to 6 months to get indexed and get into Google. And here I had done it in 10 days, and not only that, I was number 1. Well, it turned out that my boss did not believe me. He thought I had photoshopped my results to the top of the page. So once I left, he was, "Oh, Scott's right, he is there, wow." So, but that experience had been so frustrating that I was just totally, and I do not want to learn anything new. And so when I heard about podcasting, I ignored it. And then, unfortunately, the owner of the company died in a car accident, and they decided that they wanted to make sure everyone knew the company wasn't dead. So we were going to go and do these boot camps around the world. And because my blogging thing was so new and cool and nobody knew about it, and nobody did, we'd be in rooms of 600 people. I'd say, "Who's heard of blogging?" And 3 people would put up their hands. Now, of course, you would ask that question, and 90% of the people would put up their hand, if not all of them. So they gave me 2 hours on a Saturday night. So picture this for a second. You're coming to hear this bigwig internet marketing guy talk. You show up at 7 in the morning. He's going to talk till 5 in the evening, in the afternoon. Then you're going to go and have this huge dinner at the hotel restaurant or someplace, because you know you're out, you're having a good time, and you're going to eat too much. And then at 8 o'clock, you're going to come back, and you're going to listen to me go on and on and on about blogging for 2 hours. And I figured that was a recipe for insomnia relief. I figured I could talk for 1 hour on blogging and keep you interested, but 2 hours, not a hope. So I thought, what am I going to do with the second hour? And it was really weird because the company they never gave me any direction at all. They just said, "You got 2 hours, talk about blogging, see you later." And, I had 3 months to prepare. So I thought, okay, I've heard about this thing called podcasting. I've got 3 months. That's how long it took me to figure out blogging. I guess that's what I'll do. So to my utter shock and amazement, in 20 minutes, I had recorded a short MP3, set up a podcast, uploaded my MP3, downloaded my MP3, and listened to it. Now, they weren't on iTunes at this point, I don't think, but I was just like absolutely amazed at how easy it was. And of course, if you can blog, podcasting is just like audio blogging, and you're pretty much away to the races. So that's what I did. I spent the next 2 years going around the world telling everybody that would listen about podcasting. And I had started an internet marketing podcast, which is still going on. And shortly thereafter, during that period of time, I started a weight loss podcast because I thought, what would happen if you just spoke for 20 minutes once a week? No marketing. Of course, remember, there was no Facebook, no Twitter, no LinkedIn. Google was a baby. Yahoo was like king of the hill, and whatever Microsoft had for their search engine, I forget, there was CompuServe and a few of those guys around. So it was a little different. MySpace was almost big. So this is like prehistoric times. And what happened when we had a good topic and we had entertaining shows was my podcast, which was Weight Loss in the Mind, Think Fit, Be Fit, it rocketed to #1, and we had 750,000 downloads in the first year and 375,000 subscribers. It was absolutely stunning. Could not believe it. So that was the beginning of my podcasting, and since then I have hosted, co-hosted, co-produced, executive co-produced over 35 podcasts. If you put my name into iTunes, most of them will pop up and you'll see them. So that's kind of how I got into podcasting. I think it's an amazing way to connect with your audience, with your prospects.
And I want you just to repeat one point there, which was, how often did you podcast?
Once a week.
Once a week. So that's for the listeners or the people watching. You weren't podcasting 3 times a day. You weren't podcasting once a day. At the time you were just podcasting once a week, which is people ask you, how often should you podcast? So Scott, how often should someone podcast?
A minimum of once a week.
Okay.
More is better. Sometimes less is better. I mean, it depends a lot on your audience. Mm-hmm. We had a very rabid audience. They were just so excited about what we were talking about. We ended up going 35, 40 minutes after a while, and everyone was like, keep it coming, keep it coming. So you got to get a feel for it. But I think, particularly if you're starting out, 20 minutes, I think an interview style, something like what we're doing right now, is probably the best, because it's not up to you to then continue to keep the energy up and everything else. When you go back and forth with your guest or with your host, that's a lot more interesting for your listeners usually. And that's why when you listen to, like, I always look at talk radio. Turn on talk radio, turn on the sports radio, like, what are they doing? Because those guys are kind of at the cutting edge. And there's 2 or 3 people on the shows all the time, because they got to have that, they want to have it conversational, they want to have it kind of going back, and they want the viewer to be pulled in, kind of like when you go to a party and there's 3 or 4 people standing around someone and they're all talking about something. It's kind of exciting. You sort of get closer and closer, and then you listen in, and then hopefully you contribute a little bit. That's what they're trying to do, and that's what you want to do. You want to have this party, whether it can be a wild party or it can be a quiet party, doesn't matter, but it's a party where everyone gets together and they just have a good time, and they're talking and sharing whatever's going on with them. Right.
Yeah. And it works. I did that last week with Robert Riopel, and we used Be Live, but fortunately for me, he did all, like today, Robert did all the talking, and like today, I can have you do more of the talking. And that's a great way if someone's just getting started podcasting and they're a little bit nervous, then just get some, figure out a little bit of research ahead of time, who you're interviewing and what questions to ask them the question, listen to their answer, but let them do more of the talking. So thanks for
You
that.
actually hit on a really good point that a lot of people don't talk about or think about, Dwayne, including myself. And that is one way of thinking of this is there's two types of podcasters. There's the introverted podcaster and there's the extroverted podcaster.
Mm-hmm.
The introverted podcaster is the ideal interviewer. They're the ideal person to be the host and to ask questions of the guests. And the reason is because they're introverted, they tend to sit back a little bit, listen, and then they ask really good questions. Not saying that extroverts cannot ask good questions, but extroverts tend to like to be the center of attention. And so if you're wanting to be the center of the attention and you're the host, the chances are you're not going to let your guest get too many words in edgewise. So if you're extroverted and you don't have a problem talking, you should probably look at monologues and that sort of stuff. If you're more of an introvert, then you're an ideal podcast host, having guests on, because that's what introverts do. Not saying that you can't be both ways. I tend to be very introverted, but I've worked at being more extroverted. You want to have all of the palettes available to you, right? So if you know which one you are, you work on the behaviors of the other type so that you can fit in as a guest, as a host, as a monologue, as a duet, or whatever. But oftentimes people say, oh, I can't podcast, I can't be on YouTube, I'm too introverted. No, that's just an excuse. If you're introverted, then you go find a really good guest, get a bunch of questions to ask them, ask the questions, and then you look like a genius because you've got this amazing guest sharing amazing information thanks to you.
And it's a great way to grow your network by having guests. And and I'll add one quick tip to that because something. So I think I am the introvert that then learned or attempted to be more extroverted, and now it's going back the other way to say when I'm doing the podcast is go back to the natural state of being more of an introvert. Because when you try too hard to be an extrovert with guests, that doesn't work very well either.
No, you have to be yourself.
Yeah.
As I was telling you when I was going around the world talking about podcasting and blogging, I had never really spoken on large stages before. I'd been president of a Rotary Club. I had been a manager in a store with 300 people. So, I mean, I was able to talk and give directions to lots of people, but certainly not in the structure of this or when you're in front of a lot of people. And so we got a speaking coach in. And my biggest fear was he was going to change everything that I did. And the first thing he said to me is, he said, Scott, we don't want to change a single thing. We want to bring out more of you, not less of you. And so in other words, be more of who you are, be more authentic. And of course, who we are multifaceted beings. So we have lots of aspects to our personality that we can bring out. And that's what he encouraged me to do. And that's what I encourage all podcasters to do, is bring out more of you and just have fun with who you are, because that's what people connect with. They, like you said, they don't connect with someone who's trying to be what that person thinks the audience wants to hear. They connect with people who are who they are, and they let their passion and their excitement shine.
Mm-hmm. And if someone does want a little more help on speaking, you have I think you have a client who has a podcast about that, and has
Tracy Goodwin.
Yeah, maybe tell a little bit how did you and Tracy get connected, or maybe share a little bit about what we can talk about Tracy better than she can talk about herself, right? So maybe share a little bit about why someone could hop over to my podcast world, and I'll share a link to Tracy's podcast and
Captivate the Room. Captivate the Room. She's a voice coach, a speaking coach, and she was in New York. She's now in California. Hi, Tracy, because now she's going to be listening to this when she finds out we're talking about her. Her ears are burning, I'm sure. And I've done a number of courses on Udemy. I did a podcast course on Udemy 2.5 years ago, and then what I decided to do was more in-depth, shorter courses on very specific aspects of being a good podcaster, which would include being a better speaker. So I tagged her to do 4 courses with me one was on breathing, how to breathe properly for speaking.
Mhm.
One was on passion, letting your passion out. Another was on pacing. Oftentimes we don't play around with our pacing as much as we should. And then a fourth one, which also began with P, that now slips my mind. I'm sure it'll come to me. But we had a lot of fun doing the courses, and they've been very successful for both of us, and that's how I really got to know her. So I was exposed to her through Udemy, through a couple of groups and communities on Google that we're both members of, and I was really impressed with what she did, and I thought I would just love to work with her a little bit. And that's really, and you touched on this, and I want to emphasize it, Dwayne. One of the aspects of podcasting that's really exciting to me is it opens a lot of doors. If you have a blog and you say to somebody like Seth Godin, Seth, I would really love for you to be a guest poster on my blog. He's probably got a whole pile. He would just send you one. But the chances are he's not very interested in it, and he's not very engaged in it, and you're not making much of an impression. But if you can get someone like that on your podcast, all of a sudden you have a few minutes before the podcast, maybe 10 minutes after the podcast, plus the time, maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes of the actual recording of the podcast to interact with him, in which case you can learn a lot of things about him. He can learn some things, or she can learn some things about you, and you begin the development of a deeper relationship than you could otherwise get. And I think that is one of the keys to podcasting is like, who do you want to network with? Who do you want to connect with? A lot of times people will, they're not going to want to come and speak at your event necessarily if you're just starting out, or they may not want to be, I don't know how you would connect with them, but for me, it's always been a yes whenever I've asked anyone to be a guest on any of my podcasts. And of course, I position it, 10,000 people listening all the time or every week, and I've got this and I've got that. And so they go, oh yeah, this would be a really cool thing to be a part of. You have to sell it a little bit, and here's my secret. It's only 10 minutes, Dwayne. Can you be on my podcast? Just 10 minutes out of your day. Oh, okay. And I know it's going to be 20 minutes because I know once we get going, you're not going to shut up and you're going to be dropping all this great information. But I don't want to tell you it's going to be 30 minutes or even 20 minutes. I always say 10. And then at the end of 20 minutes, when we wrap up, they say, oh, that was so much fun, Scott. Or anything. Well, thank you very much for having me. And I go, yeah, no, I'm happy that you were on. And they don't even realize that 20 minutes went by. And they, so as long as their secretary doesn't come in and pull them out of the room on you, you're fine.
And I think it's good about setting the ground rules. Like we did that today to say, before I hit right as I was hitting the broadcast button, I remembered to ask you, like, Scott, how much time do we have, so that you can still measure that time, so you don't want to all of a sudden run out of airtime and you hit the stop broadcast button right in the middle of something really good.
That's right. And Dwayne, that's another point I just want to emphasize this too, is you need to respect the time of your guests. Now, I'm being a little bit disrespectful when I'm saying 10 minutes and going 20, but I'm also paying attention. Are they having a good time? Are they looking at their watch? Are they concerned about the time? If they are, I'm wrapping it up in 10 minutes. But my experience is they aren't. Like, there was a really high-end internet marketer, and about 8 years ago, I was at his event, and we got in to interview him, and we got 30 minutes. He went on for an hour and a half. We could not shut him up. Like, we wanted to stop, but he kept going, right? So we're like, okay, like, we're recording this. We're not going to stop if he's not going to stop. And his secretary or his assistant, like whatever you want to call her, she was pulling him, like, come on, like, you got to go. And he was like, no, just a minute. This is really good. We don't know why. It's not like he was our best friends or anything else, or that, he had not given us lots. He had given us huge amount. But for some reason, when we turned the camera on, he just did not want it. And I think it was because we're very good interviewers. There was 3 of us in the room with him, and 2 of us were interviewing him, and we were asking really good questions. And I think when you're getting interviewed a lot and you're always asked poor questions, when you get together with somebody that's obviously a very good interviewer, it changes things. So I think, I mean, I don't know, and we never asked him why. These are just my guesses. But you really want to make sure that you're considerate of the time of your guests. And what I said was not considerate of it, but I make sure that I am during the process, right? Like my goal is 20 minutes. If it's only 10, it's only 10. It's not the end of the world. If you really like me, I can invite him back, or I really like them, and we can invite each other back to talk some more. And because you can always have a guest on more than once.
And that's what I tell people is because somebody said, "What's the ideal time?" And I'm like, "Well, I've done an interview that was 9 minutes. We've done podcasts that are about 30 minutes, and kind of trying to chop it down to like 20 minutes." I said, "Hey, if we'll bring." I know I did one with another one of your colleagues, Joan Keller. So we did the first one. We just talked about her on Udemy, and then the second one we actually got into what was emotional freedom technique. So we didn't try and load up too much in one podcast either. It's really I guess part of it is that we should, what's your view on, we had Suzanne Hart talking the other day about freestyling for presentations like live events versus having more of a structured, now it's still structured, but she was talking about not going off of, I'm not sitting here reading a script versus having at least a plan. So if I'm working with someone like yourself, Scott, and I say, well, I want to do a podcast, and you have all these different things. So you have Udemy, you have podcast, and you have your digital nomad. Let's do a series of podcasts versus trying to get it all into one show. So what's your opinion, or what's some tips for people when you're just getting started out? You're so excited about podcasting to kind of sit back and put a little bit of structure to what you want to talk about.
Well, there's definitely structure. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end, and there's no way you can get around it. It's just impossible. That's it. There is a structure. The question then is what is your personality like, and what is the personality of your guest like? So you always want to honor your guest. Some of them like to know these are the questions you're going to ask, like politicians, right? They vet the questions. You can ask this, you can't ask that. You ask the wrong question, they leave. Those sort of things. And then you need to find out, where you're comfortable with. I like to have notes typically. Now I'm a guest. I don't have any notes at all because I'm an expert in, I don't think there's anything Dwayne could ask me that I couldn't think about for a second and come up with an answer. When you've been doing something for 10 years, all the time, that's sort of the way it is. But oftentimes when I'm the host, I go to their website, to be quite honest. I look at their about me. I try to find some interesting text in there that I can bring up, because most people just say, this is Joe, welcome Joe, like tell us about yourself, or this is Joe, and he does this and that, and it's not interesting for the guest because they've heard it a million times, right? So I always like to kind of find out something a little bit different about them, and then when I introduce them, I'm always trying because it doesn't happen all the time, but basically, this is who the guest is, this is his accomplishments or her accomplishments, these are the reasons why I'm excited to have them. And usually what happens is the guest says to me right after I introduce them, well, thank you very much, that was like quite an introduction. Yeah. So they're not used so here's one of your tips to being a better podcast host is do a little bit of research on the person, have 30 to 40 seconds worth of information to say that's not just this guy is a plumber in Milwaukee, he's been plumbing for 10 years, right? He's a father of 4, he's a grandfather of 2, he loves to miniature golf. In fact, he won a trophy at the Michigan Miniature Golf Tournament 2017 when he went there with his family for his summer vacation sort of thing, right? So something that's kind of interesting. And then here's Joe. So your guest becomes basically colored in. It's not black and white. It's 3-dimensional or holographic, not just sort of this plain vanilla paper.
It's good advice. I'll do that next time I interview you. And I think that's a great tip, though. I think because sometimes we go two extremes. We're just so happy to get someone on that we don't really know who they are. We go out and we invite someone and don't do any research, or we bring someone on that we know so well that we know. I know you, but I would
say quite well.
Yeah, but I don't know your whole story. So thank you for sharing that at the beginning. That we don't we just say, "Oh, I know Scott," so everyone hears me talk about Scott, so everyone should know who Scott is. So we'll just jump right into it, and we won't even tell why Scott should be the bigger picture on the screen, or I should just hit solo. Let me just hit solo. Let me just show people different features. All right, I'll just show Scott. It'd be like the opposite now, because I said we should do this when we were doing my Udemy. It's like, let me just stand there in front of the camera and me talk. So people are hearing this voice, hearing my voice, and they just see Scott sitting there nodding. And that's what I wanted to do when we were doing our Udemy, because you were a wordsmith. You were the executive producer, director, and everything for my Udemy courses. And I'm like, how about I just sit there and be the face, and they don't even know what my voice has to sound like. It can just be Scott Paton. So it's fun. I reversed the table. I reversed the tables there on you, because I made that be you. And how did it be on the other side of the camera, Scott?
Very good. Dwayne, I have to jump in, because we have the opportunity now with technology to everything. And so it's really a good idea, phone ready to record at a moment's notice. Like, don't have the app 14 screens in a folder. Like, have it like where you can get at it fast. And when we did this reverse marketing class that you were talking about, you were struggling a little bit with the word, because you're an accountant, right? You're not a writer, you're not a copywriter. I am a writer, so it kind of comes natural to me. And you were sitting there trying to struggle with, okay, like, how should I say this part, Scott? So I didn't even think. The copywriting part of me just turned on, and a bunch of words came out. And unfortunately, too fast for anybody to record. And then he said, "That's great. Like, what did you say?" And I don't know, because we have a left brain and a right brain. The left brain is kind of the one that's logical and will remember things. And the right brain is kind of this artsy, fartsy, creative thing that just things pop out of it. And if you don't capture them, they're gone, right? So it was like, I don't remember, right? So when we were doing our course together, it was quite funny, because you'd say, okay, well, how do I say this? And I would just, out the words would come, right? Oh, yeah, okay. And then you would say it. And of course, this is the beginning of the process. It's kind of what happens all the time, is we struggle for words. The first time you try to write a book or a blog post, you'll struggle for your words. The first time you're in front of the camera, you'll struggle for your words. Everybody does it. I don't know anybody. But as you do it more and more and more, and your brain gets stronger and stronger and stronger, and then more natural. And like Dwayne, in the last 2 years that I've known you, you've come like light years. Not that there was anything wrong with you before, but I've seen you grow light years in the way that you talk, present, and the way that you're on camera. And it's really wonderful to see, and it makes me very proud to have been a small part of that.
Mm-hmm. You were there at day one.
Yeah,
which is good, and I appreciate that. So thank you so much for that, Scott. And the piece is just by doing it, with both yourself and Gordon saying, do Facebook Live. I'm like, really, Facebook Live? Like, who wants to hear me do? And just do it. And I did an interview the other day, and it's part of it is just do it for yourself. And if people want to watch, they can watch. If people don't want to watch, they can just turn it off. And as you get better, or as I get better, fewer people will be turning it on, and more people will be turning it on. Fewer people will be turning it off, and fewer. Yeah, let me get back to starting practicing using words again.
Facebook's going to shut you down. That's what's going to happen.
Use the wrong words.
You're going to kill their servers. It'll be too much traffic. Lose this guy in Toronto. Get him off. He's killing our servers. We're crashing.
The cool thing, what we learned about, though, is some tips and tricks by, like you said, just watching and listening to other people. So a colleague of mine did it the other day. He said, hey, before I share all this great advice and stuff from Scott, I need 3 or 4 people who are watching to share it. So I did that the other day, and we got up to like 16 shares. And all we did was ask people to share the video. I haven't done this morning because we're up too early for people in Toronto. People in Toronto are still sleeping or something, or trying to get their kids to school because it's still 2 more days of school here. But
that's bad news.
What's that, bad news? That's okay, because you know what we're going to do is we're going to repurpose this content too. So it's
no, I meant 2 more days of school. This is late June. That's bad. Those poor students.
Poor students. Yeah, my sons are one of those poor students. So my son got his diploma yesterday because he's graduating from grade 5. So
Oh,
yes,
good for
they're
him.
counting. But we say 2 days, but I think they've been kind of drifting for about a week. I think that all the work was done about a week ago. But
Right.
all right, really quick, where are you today? I know you have a Facebook page that if people want to learn more about Scott Paton, you have a Facebook page maybe that says follow Scott around the world, because week by week I don't know where Scott is. So where are you today?
I'm in Odessa, Ukraine. I'll be here for another 2 weeks.
Okay.
It's on the Black Sea. It's in the Ukraine. It's right beside Russia, and it's got Poland on the other side. And on the other side of the Black Sea from us is Turkey, to give you kind of basically Eastern Europe. It's been beautiful. It's been warm, not too hot, sunny, and they've got beautiful beaches. They had a music festival a couple days ago, so I was happy to be here and be able to see some of that, which was really exciting. And yeah, I thought as I'm doing my travels, I want to spend 2 or 3 or 4 weeks in single places and just kind of get a feel for what it would be like living there. And that's what I'm doing here. And really happy to be here, really excited. I'm in a great spot. As you can see, it's a beautiful apartment. So that's where I am.
I just see an empty white wall, so you could be in your basement in Vancouver and really not. Oh, okay, there we go. Very good. Proof.
Not
proof
much to see in that room, but this is it.
But you're not spending all day in the bedroom. You're all right. So let's. We're gonna run out of time, but I want you to share your latest. I'm not sure if it's latest. You got like 10 projects on the go right now, but we talked at the beginning. There's a series of Udemy courses that you're doing about the digital nomads. I didn't even know what a digital nomad was. I had to look it up. Spending 18 years in corporate finance and attached to a desk, I'm like, what's a digital nomad? And I'm like, oh, that's what everyone wants to be. And now you guys, you and a couple of colleagues are creating some courses. You're interviewing people that are actually doing it and finding out their secrets. And it's fascinating because people are happy to share how they do it, and then you guys just ask them and you share it with your audience. And I'll let you talk, and then I actually went and looked up one about being a house sitter. So there's a website that if people want to look after someone else's house in different, and this isn't just in Toronto, this was like you pick the country on the map and there may be people there looking for someone to look after their house. So what's your course, and how can people who want to have that digital lifestyle learn from a guy in front of me right now who's doing it, not just talking about it?
Okay, well, we have Ricky Shetty and I put together 3 courses. We're working on a 4th course, and the theme is digital nomads. So digital nomads are people who work in the online world. So they could be bloggers, they could be YouTubers, they could be podcasters, they could have their own online products, they could be selling stuff on Amazon that are solid, real product, real product, they're solid, you can touch them as opposed to electrons. There's a million different ways that you can create money online or from around the world without having to be attached to a desk. Mm-hmm. And the last few years in particular, and the technology has just improved. Here I am in the Ukraine, and it looks like my video is like I'm next door to you from what I can see. Like, it doesn't look like I'm so far, I'm halfway around the world and then there's 10 hours difference in time zones. So because of the technology and the fact that I can take a laptop instead of having to take, a box and a screen and everything else around with me, we're able to unshackle from the desk and go around the world. And there are places now that are popping up that are catering to that lifestyle. And there's an office here that I can go to if I want to. And there are all sorts of desks, and I can rent the desk for like $8 a day. And I have high-speed internet. I have access to a printer. They give you free water and sometimes coconuts, and I can work away. And I'm around people in a working environment if I feel that I need that. A lot of us just find a nice place like where I am, set up, and we just start working here where we are. Chiang Mai in Thailand is one of the main hubs for digital nomads. Like, they have really put together the infrastructure to support, and usually they're younger than me, like in their 20s and 30s that are doing it, not in their 60s. But around the world, you can go anywhere you want. So the idea is that you need to have an online business, create some sort of, you could be a graphic designer, you could, there's a lot, you could be a film editor. Like, I was in Medellin, Colombia, and the guy that was staying where I was staying was editing, he had about 5 hours of video, and he was editing it down to 5 minutes, and it was about a armless skateboarder in a village outside of Medellin where they had gone, and I guess some world champion skateboarder was talking with him, interviewing him, and they were videoing him, and they were skateboarding together, and they were doing it for Red Bull. So he had 40 hours of work to edit this thing, and he was doing that in Medellin, and he could do it anywhere in the world. So the idea is, look for things that you love to do, that you can do without having to be attached to a desk somewhere, and then use that to create your income while you travel the world. And so our first course was just basically on how to travel the world for free or almost free, and you kind of picked up on a little bit when you talked about the house sitting. TrustedHousesitters.com is a fairly well-established site where you can register and then find people who want to go on vacation but don't want to leave their pets. That's basically what it's all about. So there's a group of people that want to go on vacation and don't want to leave their pets and want someone to look after the house and look after the pets. And then there's a group of people that want to travel the world and don't want to have to pay for accommodation, or like me, they want to be part of a community. Like, when I go someplace, I don't want to sit in a hotel room in Paris particularly. Well, maybe Paris would be okay, but in Nice, France or something, I want to be in the community, like where all the action is happening, and be, not just be a tourist. So house sitting is a great way to do that, and it saves on one of the major expenses of traveling, which is accommodation. Workaway.info is another site where you can volunteer, and that's the one that I do a lot of, because I can find people that need websites built or some video editing done, or online marketing, and I can go and stay with them. Usually it's a guest house, a hostel, or something along those lines, and I can help them with their online marketing. And it's usually a few hours, 5 days a week, in exchange for accommodation and food. So all of a sudden, I have no daily expenses to speak of, and I have, what I really love about it is that I have people that I've been introduced to who are wonderful people. I've had some interaction before I met them, and who know the community very well. So all of a sudden, I meet people in the community, and they say, oh, by the way, you need to go see this, you should go see that, or we're going on a day trip over here, do you want to come? And so you end up seeing a lot of things that you don't see just if you're sitting in a hotel, trying to figure out from TripAdvisor what sort of things I should see in this area. Not that TripAdvisor is not good, it has lots of information, but I really like talking to a local that's lived their whole life somewhere and being told by them, these are the things that you should see, because this is, or you end up going to places, like when I was in Athens, my friend Roger took me out to a few places that not even the local people knew were there, right? And it was amazing. So you get a depth of experience that you don't get when you just sign up for a tour.
Yeah, and possibly they give you the keys to their car to drive around too, and you're not necessarily renting a car, or the rope to the goat, or the rope to, yeah. Because I saw you one place, they had a pet goat, they had a goat or something, so you had all
3 goats.
All right, I think we're almost going to wrap up here, but I had one more thought. Yeah, so I guess as an example, I'm thinking I love wine, so why not create a wine podcast and travel the world, hanging out with at different wineries and interviewing, and you can. It's as creative as you want to be. You just have to build up an audience for it, and then go do it. It's
That's right, and it's like anything. It takes a while to get into it. It takes a while to be good at it, but once you've picked a focus, it can be tremendously rewarding. Are you going to become a millionaire? Maybe, not likely. Just like if you go into accounting, you're not likely going to become, a multimillionaire, because most accountants, I don't think, do. And that's just the way of the world, right?
You're gonna count the money, so you're gonna count the millions for the business owner, and you may count your own as the business owner, but not that you can't, but the number of businesses that generate that kind of money to pay you that well aren't.
There's not that many, but you can have a great lifestyle, and that's it. So I mean, it's part of it is deciding what you want to do, right? And then see, it's even more like most people just say, I want to make a bunch of money, and then they focus on that and focus on that, and it's backwards or half backwards. I'm not sure if it's all the way backwards or not, but we interviewed, so the second course that we came up with is Conversations with Digital Nomads. So we find all these digital nomads and we ask them, like, what are you doing? How are you traveling the world? How are you making money traveling the world? So one of them is a travel writer. Okay, he started off as an engineer or something, and then stuff happened with his wife and they got moved to another country, and he decided he loved writing and blah, blah, blah. He is a writer who is published in over 200 print magazines. Wow. Far different than being published in an online. When you're published in a print magazine, they actually pay you money. Mm-hmm. And it could be $100, could be $200, could be $1,000. So, okay, he'd have to do 1,000 and keep all his money before he'd have $1 million if he got $1,000 a pop, right? So, I mean, it's a long way to becoming a millionaire. But he's very, very good at it. And he gets into some very, very interesting magazines, not just the travel magazines that everybody thinks about. And so one of the things is, if you wanted a luxurious lifestyle, is you could look at the magazines that reflect the luxurious lifestyle that you want. And they're not just travel magazines. They could be fashion magazines, or they could be art magazines or architecture magazines. Mm-hmm. And then you come up with ideas that you pitch to the editor about creating an article for that magazine. And then what he says is, you don't want to you want to have like 3 or 4 articles that you have sold to 3 or 4 different magazines on a theme, which could be like the architecture of Monte Carlo. Okay, Monte Carlo is a very wealthy area of Europe. Mm-hmm. And so once you've got these different article ideas pitched and approved, then you go to the tourism board and to other groups, Carlo, and you say, these are the articles that I'm going to be coming to Monte Carlo to write. And then what happens is the tourism boards, and they introduce a high-end hotel for 2 or 3 nights, the high-end spas that do your nails and give you massages, the high that you want to take pictures of that are part of maybe one of your articles, and they basically just roll out the red carpet. You can do that for high-end, you could do that for kayak in the Colorado River through the Grand Canyon if you wanted, right? But for me, it was a really an eye-opening interview, because it was like, oh, wow, like we really can. The knowledge and the technology proof of it actually happening to someone else are all there. Mm-hmm. This huge smorgasbord in front of us. What to focus? You cannot be, a travel, a videographer the next day, a dishwasher the third day. Good at these skills, right? And I'm a copywriter more than a writer. And one of the things that I said to him was, oh man, that writing's, for good, but I'm a copywriter, travel writer. I don't really know how to write for travel magazines. And he said, well, you're a writer. You know how to have a special voice, a specific voice. And all you have to do is start reading magazine articles of the type of magazines that you want to write for, get a feel for their voice, get a feel for the information that they want. As a copywriter, you're used to doing the research, so he says, you'll have no problem, Scott. So that made me feel good, right? Mm-hmm. So your skills are obviously transferable, but what's really exciting is you need to decide what sort of lifestyle you want to have, what sort of travel you want to do, and then it's a matter of figuring out how to do that. And our courses are a really good way of starting out, because a lot of what we talk about are ideas to get you thinking about, oh, I could travel and make money doing this. Oh, I could, the conversations with digital nomads is great because we cover house sitting. We talk to people that have house sat. Okay, so let me go off on a tangent with house sitting. This couple have house sit for, I don't know how many years, like quite a few years. And what happens is when you house sit for somebody, if they like you and you like them, do you think that this is the only 3-week vacation they're ever going to take? No. So what they have is they have a group of 8 houses where the people email them and say, we're thinking about taking a vacation, September 1st to October 3rd. Would that be convenient for you? Because we're only planning now. And would you be able to come then? And they, yeah, okay, we'll put you in. We're free then. We'll come. Great, thanks. Okay, so we're now going to start planning our vacation based on the fact that we know you're going to come. We don't have to teach you anything. We don't have to train you. We don't have to tell you about the dogs. The dogs are going to look forward to seeing you because they know you've been doing it for 3 years or 4 years. And I thought, this is something that never occurred to me. So if you want to do a continual nomad journey and you have places that you like and you want to return to, okay, then this is an ideal thing to do. But getting in, finding, the right places and everything else takes time, takes research, takes practice, takes making mistakes, and all the rest of it. And if you take our course, you're introduced to these people, and they can, of course, shortcut that whole journey for you. In fact, I want to become their friends because they said, yeah, I says, when we can't come, they say, well, who do you know that could come and look after it, right? So with a referral, it's always better than just this cold thing that happens on the websites. Yeah. And I thought, okay, I got to know these people really well, keep in touch with them, because if I'm in a certain area, they might have a house sit for me, which would be really, really cool. And so there's lots of ways to travel, and our courses are all about, helping you find out what those options are, so then you can make some good decisions.
Okay, thank you so much for that. And I guess my girlfriend Charmaine is actually, here's a quick, maybe you already know about this, but she's, she has a corporate job, but one of the things she likes to do is actually writing reviews on TripAdvisor. So already, like, her TripAdvisor account has over 3,000. I think she's only done 3 or 4 places, but she has like almost 3,000 people have used her different reviews for the places that we've gone to. So there's different. I guess my point is there's different tools out there to say, even if you don't even know where to get started, things like Facebook. Facebook says, hey, check into this venue. That you can easily get started by just writing a couple lines for someone who's not a writer, and then build up to it, and you're slowly building up that resume so that you're not just, hey, I'm going to retire tomorrow. Actually, the principal at the school is retiring from my son's school. Hey, I'm going to retire, and now I'm going to start from scratch, and I got to wait like 3 years to build up a resume. Or I'm pretty sure for the last 20 years she did vacations that you could have been writing reviews locally on different things, and then you built up your resume. So my tip for you is TripAdvisor, and now things like Facebook check-in, to say, why not start by building up a resume of reviews that way.
Yeah,
and Yelp.
One of the things that I didn't do that I wish I had before I left was go on local house sits. It would have been fairly easy, because I've noticed a lot of people like people that are local, that know the area and that sort of thing, and to have gone locally and just house, because there's a lot of short ones and long ones. Like I would look for like 3 weeks minimum as a house sit for me. Actually, and this may be a bit premature, but tomorrow at 10 o'clock, I'm having a chat with a couple in South Africa that I'm hoping to house sit there in October for 5 weeks. So we'll see, so fingers crossed, hopefully that will work. But A lot of them are just like a weekend or 3 days or a week. And I thought, if I'd known about it because I didn't know about it till I left, which is another thing. Sometimes you don't find out stuff until you've already left.
You're on the road, because then you're on the road meeting these people.
That's right. They're all interested in it. But if I'd have known and done 5 house sits for a weekend around around Vancouver, I would have had a whole bunch of reviews. I would have had, credibility that I don't have right now. And, and all that makes, like, your profile, who you are and who you seem to be and who you're shown to be online is very, very important, right? If you've got a resume that says, I've never done anything like Photoshop, I've never built a website, and you're trying to convince somebody that you should do their website, like, it's not going to work. And similarly, when someone wants to trust, they want to trust you with their pets or their home, they want to know that you're not going to come back to a place that's wrecked and lost. So you need to have those reviews, those testimonials.
And I guess I'm going to be doing this for my first time in September, because Charmaine's actually going over to Europe for almost 3 weeks. So I'm going to be staying at her place while she's away. Ideally, I would have liked to have gone with her, but it's like a family vacation, and I still have to work. But I'll get her as a reference to say, hey, I was away for 3 weeks, and this guy looked after my condo for me. And why not? Like, we just sold our house, so now you got me thinking. Like, we just sold our house, and I could actually do different weekends or different weeks just here in Toronto, in the GTA, which is really people don't. I'm like, yes, I went on that site, and there's people locally in Ontario, for example, the work one, where you can go up and go up to Algonquin Park and hang out at a bed and breakfast, and all they want is someone to do their gardening for them for like 4 hours a day. You got to pull some weeds or there's one that we only have a donkey, so you have to till the ground as an organic farm or something.
And they're all interesting experiences.
Yeah, they are. And then you're like, wow, if I'm running a digital business and I'm recording podcasts like the other 8 hours a day, I just need to make sure that, and what you found, I guess, is one of the tricks is not everywhere has great upload and download. So sometimes they have great download speed, but what we've realized is it's in your business, it's not just the download speed, it's being able to upload. Yeah. And so that's another tip for people is check out the upload speed, because it's frustrating when especially if you're doing this, like recording videos, and you want to upload the video or upload the audio file back up to My Podcast World. Little plug, My Podcast World. It does take a little bit. Or Facebook, downloading a Facebook video. It took, even on Toronto, Bell has their advertising, hey, we have the fastest internet in the world. It still took 40 minutes to download, and a 60-minute interview off of Facebook. So it's really knowing the technology. So, all right. We used more than 30 minutes of your time this morning, but thank you so much, Scott. Hadn't seen you since January, so it was great to see you. And maybe if you send me a link, I can share a link to that first Digital Nomads course or something. We can see what.
Sure.
People want to.
I'll send you a link.
Yeah, that'd be cool, and I'll put that.
Happy to have the video on.
Yeah, and when we record this as a podcast, I'll put this in the show notes. I'll put that link in the show notes of the podcast too. So that will be a little tip for people to say, hey, because someone asked, I actually have a friend that's down in, she's down in Peru, or she was just at Machu Picchu. So following your roots, I guess, she's in her 20s, so she was just there. And how do you make money while you're traveling? So I will send this link to her because.
Thank you.
Yeah, wonderful. I appreciate your time. Where are you going after? Where's after Ukraine? What's next?
Poland. I have a week retreat helping people learn to speak English conversationally. So I'm going to go to Poland, and then I'll be in Norway for the month of August.
All right. And as a really quick trip, this is how you plan 24 months of travel with the weather, right? Because you didn't pack when you left here, you
Yeah.
had like a light jacket, but so plan
Yes.
your world. Start where it's warm. So you started in Morocco, and then you
Yeah.
went down into Italy, and now you could go back up. You could head a little bit north as the summer, and then when winter starts to approach, you're gonna, as you said, migrate down to South Africa or somewhere.
That's
Um,
right.
and it does.
Following spring is my goal, because spring is a very nice time of year.
You know, that could be a book.
Good. I'll write it down.
You could
Following
be
the spring.
following the spring. That's my 24-month journey of following the spring. Um, as Gordon's good at that. So Gordon's good at creating ideas. So we just created yet another project for you, Scott.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank
Appreciate
you
that.
again. Have a great day.
Yep. Bye-bye.